I've had conversations with people that are along the lines of, I would like to pursue something that I enjoy, but I don't know what that is anymore.
Welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast, where we're all about sharing tools to build leaders in academic medicine. And I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Jennifer Villlwock. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Now, everybody, Dr. Jennifer Villwock, she is an associate professor in otolaryngology at the University of Kansas Medical Center in Kansas City. And what's super cool about Jennifer is she has an amazing TED Talk called The Black Hole. Go to the YouTubes and go find her on the TED Talk, The Black Hole. I'm not going to give you spoiler alerts, but it's a really motivational, encouraging message, just what we need to hear, what we're never, it's just really good. You got to really go and check it out. And I was put in touch with her by one of our professors here, Dr. Yuri Agarwal at Hopkins. Another good message and a pointer that if you know somebody who's got a great message and some wisdom to share and just has a heart for helping faculty members, just put them our way and let's spread the good news and get that out there. So speaking of good news, Jennifer is going to share something on her pearls about wellness. So what would you like to share with us today, Jennifer?
I think that there's so much going on in the general topic of wellness within the medical field because we recognize that this is not something that we have historically done well for ourselves. And, I think from my perspective, one of the ways that we can best serve each other in terms of our own professional development is just being more open about conversations about wellness and where we are. I feel that so much of the time we're supposed to pretend that we know what's going on and what we're doing, and that we're getting fulfillment from the things that we think that we're supposed to. When really what that does is it robs us of the opportunity to have some really deep and insightful conversations with ourselves about what we really value and then how to align our professional efforts with those things.
Well, I like what you just said, what we really value, because that, it reminds me years ago, I went to a AAMC, the Association of American Medical College. They had a special speaker on, it was some kind of a leadership topic. And the presenter, who was a gifted presenter, it was like a 2-3 day thing, had us start with this values exercise. And I'm on ENTJ for people who are in Myers-Briggs. And I'm kind of like, roll your sleeves up, get her done, don't mess around, let's get down to business kind of person. And he gave us, we all had these card decks to go through your values. And I was like, really? Literally, our values? My thought bubble was, are you kidding me? Of course we all have the same values, hard work, perseverance, curiosity. What's the point of this? And then once I, got off my, fancy pants, obnoxious attitude, I realized, wow, this is really important stuff because it forced you to say, you can't have all these values, Kim. You can't have, of these 40, 50 cards, whatever, in the slide deck, in the card deck, they're not all always important to you. You can only have 10 of them and the always important, sometimes important. And so since that time and that epiphany of me kind of realizing, Kim, humble yourself. There's value in looking at values. We start a lot of our leadership programs and our early retirement career planning programs and next chapter programs with a values exercise. And I love how you start with that of we gloss over that. We don't stop to think that what are our values and how they change in seasons of our life, right?
Absolutely. And I think part of that is our training paradigm, to be honest. It's this mentality that, you get through the hard stuff to some sort of nebulous, easy time in the future, forgetting that we live in the present, right? The easy time in the future never comes because it's always in the future. And, I think that as we progress through our training, it's very easy to say, okay, I'm a med student now. I just got to put my head down, suffer whatever I have to suffer, do whatever I have to do. And then things will be better when I'm a resident. And then fast forward a few years, you're a resident, you're still the same person because you've been working on all of these external things and not really anything internal about your own development. And then, you see many years down the line, I've had conversations with people that are along the lines of, I would like to pursue something that I enjoy, but I don't know what that is anymore.
Ooh, I don't know what that is anymore. Oh my gosh, in the gut. Talk about a punch.
Yeah, because we've spent so much time focusing on these external, to-do lists and saying, we'll sacrifice everything else for that future time when we'll have time. And then when you get to that moment, you don't remember how to have fun. You don't remember how to pursue things outside of, the academic or professional things that
Mm.
you've been told that that's what you should value and focus on.
And you're right. It's this identity. If we are so enmeshed in the master status of surgeon, anesthesiologist, otolaryngologist, scientist, and that is our all-encompassing status or role, that we can't envision any other self. And it's especially hard, I think, when faculty approach that next season of, all right, I'm in my creeping up on my 60s or age 70. And what is retirement? How could I retire from this? I don't know what else there is to do. I don't know who I am if I'm not that. And
Mm-hmm.
that is to me so, how tragic. I'm going to go off on a riff here and people are going to be so annoyed with me, but just for a moment, it reminds me of systems theory when I learned my first master's degree about conflict habituated couples. That's all they know. They live in this habituation of conflict. And it kind of makes me think of in academic medicine, we are habituated to this busy, busy, push, push, head down, work like crazy, sacrifice, 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 that when we're not in that space, or there's a possibility of not being in that space, we don't know how to be. We're so accustomed and attuned to thrumming at that high stress level and self-sacrificing that we don't have any space for the joy and the living life of the real us. So I'm going to shut up. You talk more. You're the expert here.
No, I'm just an expert in my own lived experience, which seems to happen to resonate with a lot of other folks. But I think you're exactly right. And so much of the culture of medicine is built on kind of this altar of sacrifice, right? You're more worthy the more you're willing to sacrifice. And I think that by extension, what that means is that we turn our suffering into a competition. And it starts very early. I remember, being a medical student and, you're like, oh, I had to miss out on XYZ family thing so that I could study. And I spent, 8 hours studying on Saturday. And you're talking to someone that you would consider to be a friend, and their response is, oh, yeah, well, I missed this and I studied for 10 hours, and I think that just sets the stage for a lot of really unproductive dialogue, because the conversation we should be having is not who can suffer more, but like, why are we suffering and what is the meaning and purpose behind it? And if the answer is we don't know, then I think that means that, we need to be asking different questions and not just continually trying to suffer more than the person next to us.
You're so right, Jennifer. The cult of busy, like we've earned a badge of who can out busy someone else. It's so toxic. And all it takes is for one person to tap out. I'm not playing that game of who got the least sleep, who has, not seen their children in years, weeks and months and years, and who is throwing themselves on the altar, like to what end? To what end? And I think it's so important that you elevate this and remind us this is not a competition. It's a cult that we should not want to be a member of, the cult of busy, the turning our suffering into a competition. I love it. You're so right.
Yeah, and I think what happens when you say, you know what, I'm not into suffering anymore, just for the sake of it. It opens up space for some different types of conversations. Like so much of the time, I think we look around and we're like, I don't want this in my life. I don't want this. I don't want this. But what we don't ask ourselves is, well, what do you want instead? Kind of like when you look at pictures of yourself and you're like, I don't like how that looks, but you can't articulate what you would like it to look like, how you would want it to be different. And, for me, I'm currently going through some coach training. And one of the exercises that sounds like really silly, but I think it was really transformative for me, was just going through like the thing that you do with your clients, like in one of the first meetings, which is establishing a wellness vision. Again, seems really silly, but I had not thought about, well, instead of focusing on what I don't want, well, what do I want? And, not having gone through the exercises to really try and articulate that for myself. Putting some intentionality behind it was really important. And if you don't mind, I can share with you
Please.
what I came up with.
Oh, I would love it.
Yeah. And so, in my wellness vision, what I am doing is I am pursuing a life of curiosity, wonder, and continual learning and growth, contributing meaningfully to my family and community, feeling satisfied and strong in my body, not seeking escape or distraction, not easy, but more ease.
Not easy, but more ease.
Right. And what's not in there? Nothing about me being a surgeon, nothing about,
An
all of these
RO1.
other things. Yeah, nothing about my RO1, but, more about, who am I at my core? Because to your point, I don't know if I shared this with you, but, I was out earlier this year for several months on disability because I had to have surgery on my wrist. And, that takes a stab at your identity when you're a surgeon, that you're not, quote unquote, doing anything productive, while you're not able to operate and serve patients. Having
Yeah.
a vision for yourself that is more who you are at your core and who you would like that core person to be, as opposed to what you can do externally, I think is very important, especially, if I think about what I'll be doing in 30 years, probably not still spending a lot of time in the OR, if we're being honest. I just don't think that my body's going to hold up to that for 3 more decades. And so how do I, pivot to different career opportunities when I think about, me at the age of, 60 and still feel fulfilled that I'm living my life's purpose and fulfilling this wellness vision? Well, it has to be linked to who you are at your core, not just what you can do now.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's just so beautiful, the curiosity and wonder. And I know that people listening to you right now are like, yeah, that's why we went into academic medicine, because we are innately curious and we do have this sense of wonder. And so that doesn't mean it's not important to do scholarship and to do science and to seek leadership opportunities. That doesn't mean any of that, but I like how it's a reminder of grounding in rolling the tape back. Who were we as children? What gave us that wonder? What excited us? Where was our natural gifting, and remembering that freedom and that joy, kind of reminding ourselves of who we are, that is the unique, special person. And I guess taking those moments, it's really, it's so difficult being in academic medicine, and everybody's working so hard. And I see so many times we just lose ourselves. And I love that reminder of the vision is, again, hearkening back to who I am, what brings me joy. How can I remind myself of who I am and my contribution, and that what will carry me forward? After all, at the, church or the cemetery, no one's going to be reading our CVs, right? They're not going to be handing out leaflets to everybody with our our curriculum vitae showing all the grants we got and all the funding and all the papers. So again, that's important, but reminding ourselves of why we're doing what we're doing. I like that you also shared the coaching framework and mentality of being curious and non-judgmental and exploring who we are, and helping that to even propel us further in our careers and then in our personal lives. So I think the coaching is a really nice way to remind us about the whole wellness umbrella. Can you tell us more about your coaching journey and how you anticipate this, or how it has helped you going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've drank the coaching Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
I
me
think
too.
it tastes lovely.
Yes.
It's not an acquired taste even. Yeah, it's just something, that I think naturally resonates with me, because so much of it, as you mentioned, is kind of staying curious. And, I have a small child. Well, she's not so small now, because it turns out kids grow up quicker than you're ready for them to. But I have I have an 8-year-old, and just kind of watching her grow up and watching how naturally kids explore. And when things don't go well, that doesn't mean that they're like going to stop trying new things. It just means that they learn something from that lesson, keep going, see what fits next, try on a different costume or outfit and see if it resonates with you. which I think is something that we don't often give ourselves that same grace as adults. We make things that happen in our lives have very strong value judgments. Like, oh, that presentation didn't go well. Guess I'm a terrible speaker and I will never try again.
Yeah.
Right. And
I'm taking
so,
my toys and I'm going home.
yes, exactly. And I will never leave my room again.
I'll show
But
you.
yeah. But, I was introduced to some women at Case Western, actually, who are in their internal medicine department, and they run a coaching program. And I was introduced to them through way of my work in imposter syndrome, which we can talk about as well if you would like.
Yeah.
But they run a wonderful coaching program there. So they kind of introduced me to the paradigm, which is kind of a more formalized way, kind of having these conversations with yourself with the help of your coach, who is not there to judge or evaluate or tell you what to do, but really create that safe, curious space to identify what are the things that are most important to you and relate to your core values, and what do you want to see for yourself in the future, and why, and how do those things relate back, and how do we set goals that are, I cringe at the acronyms too, because I feel like I was forced to memorize so many meaningless acronyms in my training, but how do we set goals that, are actionable and measurable and that are doable so that we can set a track record of success, on our journey to this person that we'd like to be, which is in and of itself a continual evolution. And so after I started sipping the coaching Kool-Aid, I decided, okay, I'm ready for, a big 32-ounce glass of it. So I started participating in one of the several accredited and recognized kind of coach training programs. And the one that I did, my cohort was specific for coaching other physicians and healthcare professionals, because it is kind of a unique need, and it can be helpful to know that the person you're interacting with can understand, and can relate to the unique struggles or issues that are occurring within that realm.
Perfect.
And so it's been very transformational, even just like the practice coaching sessions, which seem really like the role play that I always hated in medical school. But, I think it's much more real, I think, when you're with other people that are very interested in the coaching journey and becoming coaches and helping people. One example, when we think about, well, what are goals that are important to set to set this track record of success? They don't have to be big goals. And sometimes, and they don't have to be professionally related. It doesn't have to be like getting this R01 grant, right? Maybe what's creating dis-ease for you is that my example was I wanted to stop eating dessert every night after dinner. But it was hard for me to come up with a reason why, other than making it an exercise in self-discipline, because, I'm not overweight. My cholesterol is great. All of my biometrics are wonderful. So why am I doing this? And after a couple of sessions with one of the other coaches in training, what we identified is that the need that wasn't being met for me was the need to be intentional and to connect my actions to meaning. And so what we decided together was, well, it sounds like what would be more helpful for me would be to set a goal to only eat the dessert when it's meaningful. Because my husband is like an endurance athlete, so he has to eat dessert to get enough calories, and I am not an endurance athlete, so I don't have that need.
Poor guy. Yeah.
So the goal that I set for myself was to eat dessert when it was meaningful. So I'm not depriving myself just for the sake of it to say that I can. But if it's something that I created with my daughter, or it was a new recipe that we tried, then I'm going to eat it and I'm going to enjoy it and I'm not going to have any guilt about it. And then the other times when it's just kind of this reflex thing, I'm going to opt out because it doesn't have any meaning. It's just routine. And it's my husband's routine. It's not even my routine. And, after not having success, trying to just practice the self-discipline route, connecting it to that meaning, and then being able to see what? Not only did I achieve that goal, I didn't feel deprived. Kind of revolutionized my whole week.
Win. Dr. Jennifer Villlwock. Listen, are you hearing what she's saying? This is brilliant. I love how you turned something that's very commonplace, that millions and millions of people around the world would have goals like that, to get healthy, to lose weight, to get fit, to get or do or become whatever. And how through coaching, there was an aha awareness of it's not about that. It's rather shift, recalibrate. It's about intentionality. Oh, so that is a beautiful example of engaging in a co-thinking exercise where it's the light bulb moment of aha. And I think we all would have those aha moments if we pause and just build in time in our daily, weekly, whatever regularity to reflect on those things of, as you started off the conversation, what is important to me? You said time with my daughter. Is it in talking with my daughter or having something special? That those moments are only realized when you stop and think about them. But so many of us in academic medicine are running through life like we're on fire because that's that habituation of busy, 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 busy. So everything comes back to this nice way that you put it earlier of just this vision of intentionality. I love that's a great example of coaching. Please go on and I will shut my mouth.
No, the only other thing that came to mind as I just heard you say that too is that yes, it's amazing what you will see when you take the time to notice. And some simple examples of that. There's so much beauty every day that we just walk right by because we're on the way to the next patient, the next OR, etc. And so other examples of what you can do, like I had a friend that I only had ever met through email who's also an otolaryngologist, but what we started doing was when I would see something surprising and beautiful, I would take a picture and I would text it to her.
Oh.
And she would do the same thing. And it was just this amazing, beautiful way to be like, look what I took the time to notice today. And it was amazing.
And share it with somebody else.
And share it with somebody and tell her why I thought it was beautiful. And then, the response isn't always immediate, but she would do the same thing. And then it was like, I not only got to notice more beauty in my life, but I got to see some of the beauty in hers. And it's just been like a wonderful exercise that takes no time. We're all always on our phone anyway, but I think it just expands the things that we're able to see because we're trying to notice.
Oh my gosh, you guys. Don't you want to go to University of Kansas and hang out with Jennifer Villlwock? Oh my gosh, what a beautiful, beautiful. I just love that whole, you're reminding me of, I got my AARP magazine in the mail a couple of days ago, and there's something in there about social media and how, this whole comparison, maybe kind of this is a segue into, your great wisdom around imposter syndrome, but how everyone is comparing themselves to their insides to people's outsides. And social media is a great way of destroying our egos by seeing all the polished and edited versions of people's lives. I think that started back with Facebook and then people taking pictures of their food and they're like, oh, my life sucks compared to everybody else's. But in the AARP magazine, there's apparently some new apps or things that it's called like real time or something that you agree to be on it. And then randomly throughout the day, it takes a picture of what you're looking at forward and backward. So it's like real life. So that you're not getting these posed, hey, look at me in my perfect world, but rather this is me in the hallway in the emergency room, or this is me at my kids, soccer practice. But it's just kind of real life. And apparently this is growing in popularity because it gives you that inside window into authenticity, And so I like that reminder of not only that new app or apps apparently, but also the beauty in the things that aren't just so obviously beautiful. You're not obviously going and touring the Louvre, but you're looking at ordinary things that we would maybe step over on the street or at the curb and seeing those moments. So yeah, once you riff on this whole next thing with the imposter, because I love your message there.
Yeah, so imposter syndrome is something that I became interested in residency. And at that time, the book Lean In, it hadn't just come out, but I think it was becoming very popular at that time. And so it's a topic that's discussed within that book. But For those that are unfamiliar, it's essentially, as the name implies, a pervasive sense of being an imposter. You're not good enough. It's only a matter of time until people figure it out. Obviously, all of your past successes, however impressive, were just due to luck, and you're still a fraud at your core.
Yeah.
And we started, having conversations within my residency cohort because we were noticing that different people would have objectively very similar experiences, particularly in the operating room. And, you do a procedure skin to skin, your attending never really needed to help. And some of us would come out of that sort of experience and just be like, nailed it. I'm the best surgeon. Look at me. Versus others, would say, oh, I did do that procedure skin to skin. However, I could have done this part of the dissection faster, and here I could have been a little bit more, technically excellent, et cetera. And, in talking with some of my co-residents, we were like, why is that? Why are some of us having, such different reactions? And then we leaned in, we learned about imposter syndrome, and like all good little nerds, we were like, we must study this. So, we sent out some surveys just to figure out, well, what is this experience, isolated to us? Is this something that's pervasive within the medical culture? And one of the interesting, and one of the things that, was striking to me is that one of my attendings came up to me after the survey was deployed, because we sent it to our attendings as well. And he was like, Jen, do people really feel this way? Because it had a questionnaire, of all the different kind of imposter type, thoughts, and he was like, do people really feel this way? And I looked at him and I was like, do people really not feel this way? Because we're all our own internal frame of reference. So we just assume, that if you're having all these imposter thoughts, it must be normal and everybody else has them, versus if you're on the other side of that coin and you never have these thoughts, you just assume nobody else does either. But come to find out, it's very common, more prevalent in women versus men, more prevalent in underrepresented minorities in medicine within the medical context, which makes sense if there's nobody around you that looks like you, you can be told till the cows come home that this is an option for you. But at the end of the day, you have to be the trailblazer. And then there's these undercurrents within the conversation of, am I only here because I'm the token, insert aspect of your identity that's not well represented in the field. So there's so many of these thoughts constantly swirling around. And for those of us in academic medicine, we need to be aware that a lot of our students are struggling with these feelings, like the stereotypical mean surgeon that's just going to ask you questions until you don't know. Like, if that person already thinks that they're not good enough and that they can't succeed in medicine, that methodology is going to be very toxic for them. And I think it circles back to the overall conversation about wellness as well. And how do we teach better in a way that's not going to harm, our students?
Right. Such a thank you for sharing that. It just is always a reminder to me that we need to evolve. That yes, there are best practices and there's standard ways of doing things that have been, the evidence it's been borne out through evidence that this is the way thou shalt do things. And yet it's also a reminder that nothing is static. Things change, people change, environments change, cultures change. Reimbursement models change, all these things change. And so it's an opportunity for us as humans to reflect on how we can change and improve and evolve our methodology. So I really think it's important to push back graciously at that model, as you pointed out, that model of interrogation. That, what is the benefit to that? Like, maybe that worked then, but that's not the model now. And to what end? What are we trying to achieve there? That you're this tough woman who's really trying to intimidate people. And is that really the best way to learn something? Is that the way to inspire curiosity and wonder when you're going to beat someone about the head? So I think it's a reminder that the constant evolution. General, I always want to say George, and I think it's wrong, Kinsheki or Shinseki, some military guy who said, those who do not, evolve or change will suffer the consequences of complete irrelevance. Like we can't like hold true and fast to some of these, well, this is just the best way to do things when they could be in fact now harmful. So evolution to me and change is where I see that story going in my rambling head.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the rationale for why we do things can no longer forever be because this is how I was taught, or this is how it was for me,
Right.
or woe is me, uphill in the snow, both ways, etc.
Yeah, no.
That doesn't mean that we pass that on to the next generation.
Yeah, this whole, I think it's so important, especially in academic medicine, because I think unlike a lot of other industries, maybe I'm just being ignorant or biased in my being in academic medicine my whole life, is that when we go through training and all think of, from a little kid, grade school, middle school, high school, college, medical school, doctoral training, master's degrees, residence, intern, all the training, the fellowships, we're always like in a system with other people, and there's a curriculum and there's a process, and we're marching through the path and the way to do things with other people, and there's a prescribed protocol, and then we get released into academic medicine, and it's like kicked out of the nest, like goodbye, good luck, have fun, spread your wings and soar. In so many faculty, they're alone, they're isolated, they don't know how to be on their own. Maybe that creativity, that confidence is so easily, I think, easily eroded or shot down because it's such a tough business of being rejected paper after paper, grant after grant application, clinical loads, trying to balance and please everybody. And then all of a sudden you're all by yourself. And then we wonder why faculty have, low levels of satisfaction and engagement. To me, it's like an abrupt shift from a life of prescribed training to complete freedom in some regards that has this sense of anomie or normlessness or lawlessness that can really set people feeling of the self-doubt. So I see a lot of times that's where that kind of imposter syndrome comes, in part because of the isolation. That if we were surrounded by people who were more like, I got you. No, yeah, me too. Yeah, of course I feel that way. Come on, that would be a little bit more like, but we don't have that system is not set up that way, right? Or am I off?
Yeah. And I think we're not programmed to have those conversations because for so long, like the person that you see at the conference, that's not the real person. That's the avatar of that person, right?
Ooh, love it.
Like,
love it.
That's me in a suit. That never happens in real life, right? But this is the professional avatar that I think I'm supposed to put out in some of these scenarios. And what does that avatar say when you ask her how she's doing? Great. So happy to be here. That's not true. I'm an introvert. I hate conferences. Right? This is not my jam. I would rather be in my hotel room watching HGTV.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I've been trained that avatar needs to go out there and look the look and say the things. And some of the moments that can be transformative, I remember being at a professional development retreat through one of our professional organizations, and a woman that I had interacted with before. She's also an otolaryngologist, came and sat at the table and starts the conversation in the traditional way with, "Oh, how are you doing?" And, I took a breath, and in that moment I was like, I think I'm just going to say what is happening in my mind. So I told her, I was like, I'm really happy to be here. I think what we're learning is really valuable, but it's really hard for me because it's been a long kind of conference season and I'm really tired and I just miss being at home. I miss my family.
Whoa.
And she kind of like took a pause, right? Because the normal response is, "Great, how are you?" But she took a pause and then looked at me and she said, "You know what? Me too." And then we actually had a conversation beyond just the awkward pleasantries that normally occur. And so I think, the sorts of conversations that we're having today are so important because they need to be more commonplace, and expected, right? We can't just have all of these like fake avatars going around pretending like they've got everything, figured out and everything's going great. Sometimes that's the case, but not always and not in every context.
Me too. It's a different twist on the whole Me Too culture. Yeah, me too. It's comforting in that sense. Yeah, I'm not alone. We're not alone. Me too. I love the metaphor, the professional avatar. Yeah, that's so true. And it reminds me of that television commercial now of depression, where they show people with that stick and that kind of happy face, and the people are walking around with their happy face stick, but it's a commercial for some antidepressant. And it's like, I have this fake face on, but you remove the stick with the happy face and I'm very sad. But so many of us lack the courage because we don't want to bring them down. And good, yeah, thumbs up, all good, how are you? And go on. But that takes courage. And gosh, what happens? Right. She paused. And wouldn't that be a wonderful opening, like you said, to transform the way of being with other people, that you're authentic, that you're real. You're not doing a drive-by greeting. All good? No, it's not so much all good.
Mm-hmm. And I think in that way too, going back to treating things with curiosity, if, let's say, for example, that person was just like, oh, all right, that's kind of a weird response. Okay, cool. It's still a low risk interaction for me. I only see this person at like conferences.
Yeah.
So if now they think I'm some sort of like psychologically deranged weirdo, that's fine. I'm not going to see them for another year, right? But the best case scenario there is that, oh, now I found someone that I know has these same feelings and is open to having these sorts of real interactions. And I think the value that is gained from that far outweighs any perceived risk of being like the weirdo.
Oh, Jennifer, risk and reward. What were to happen if, as physicians, you were to walk into that patient encounter and also be authentic? Like, I'm also a human too. How would that change patient, family, practitioner relationships? How would that change us when we walk into the lab and say, no, I'm going through a really tough time now? How would that change our authentic relations with our bosses, with our colleagues, our trainees? I mean, it's just so important, a reminder. So thank you of, even if not for you, me, a person, but the contribution of loving others enough to say, no, I'm going to be real with you, and opening up possibilities. And even, like you said, if person thinks you're a weirdo, or I'm a like superficial cheerleader and I'm just always up, maybe at that moment you won't get the connection that you had hoped, but I guarantee you that seed has been planted. And maybe not now, but maybe next time, it's that that recollection of, oh, that's the one who, oh, I have some connection, something in my body, my soul, my spirit recognizes that person as being the one who has the courage to say, yeah, me too, or share something real. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, it gives you an opportunity to get out of that physician mindset of whatever people bring to me is a problem I need to fix.
Oh.
Sometimes we don't fix anything, but we give our presence, which can be just as therapeutic.
Ooh, I love that. That a daily. Oh, where's my daily? I think I put it somewhere else, but that was a reminder to me. Like, don't try to fix people. You can't. Don't try to heal people's pain. You can't. Just be there with them. The presence of being. And earlier on, you said, we're always in this, doing. And when I had my surgery, I was afraid of being dinged as not doing anything productive because I was having the surgery. And we're always fixated on the doing, forgetting that we're human beings and not human doings. And just being is sometimes enough. That knowing that when someone is grieving or having trouble, you don't have to do anything necessarily. You can just be with them. Yeah. And be with ourselves too, right? Just being.
Yeah, because the reality is sometimes there's nothing to be done. Nothing you do is going to make it better. Nothing you do, is going to make someone else's grief go away. But what you can do is just be there.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer Villlwock. Woo, this is so powerful. You have to go to TED Talk and see the Black Hole with Dr. Jennifer Villlwock, Billwock. She's doing coaching. So wouldn't you love to have her as a coach? You can hit her up at her email address is jvillwock, JVILLWOCK @KUMC. Stands for Kansas University Medical Center.edu. You'll find all that information on the facultyfactory.org website. You'll have a nice profile. You'll see her picture. Definitely check her out. She's amazing. And I guess I'll leave the final word to you, Jennifer. Again, thank you so much. You are so inspirational. I just love everything about you.
Aw, thank you so much. Right back at you, Kim. And yeah, my final word would just be, stay curious. Don't be afraid to have these conversations. Find the people that want to have them too.
Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. The mission of the Faculty Factory is to build and support a community of leaders in faculty development who share tools, resources, wisdom, and encouragement in service to our faculty members, schools, and institutions. We encourage you to go to facultyfactory.org to find out more. Get in touch with me, ask me any questions. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. We'll see you next time. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine Office of Faculty. For more information, visit facultyfactory.org.